Dust and smoke covered the ruined alien city. The ground still glowing from the last plasma strikes. The air smelled of metal and burning stone. A lone human named Rylan moved through the broken streets. His boots crunching on shattered glass. He carried a small light on his chest plate, scanning for anything useful, food, tech, or fuel. Anything he could trade to survive. For 3 days he had not seen another living soul. Only silence and the whisper of wind through metal bones. He walked past a fallen tower where banners of some alien empire still waved weakly, their symbols burned but still proud. Rylan had fought in the war once, just a ground soldier. Just another human who did what he was told. Now he scavenged what was left behind, but deep inside he felt guilt. Guilt for the worlds burned and the voices lost. As he climbed over debris, he heard something. A sound that didn't belong to the ruins. It was a faint cry, small and sharp, like someone calling out for help. Raylan froze. His hand went to his blaster. He waited, listening again. Another cry came, weak but real. He followed the echo through broken walls until he reached the base of a collapsed archway. Beneath heavy stones, something moved. He set his light closer. His breath caught. It was an alien girl, barely alive, her skin pale silver with faint golden veins glowing beneath. Her eyes half open, lips trembling. She tried to speak, but only air came out. She looked young, maybe his age, maybe less. Her arm twisted under rubble. Her breathing shallow. Rylan hesitated. Humans were not welcome on this planet anymore. The war had ended, but peace was fragile. Helping her could mean death if anyone saw. But she was alive, and in that moment, Rylan could not walk away. He threw down his pack, pulled a metal rod free, and started lifting stones, each one heavier than before. Sweat ran down his face, dust stung his eyes. But he kept going. She groaned once, and he said softly, "Hold on. I got you." When the last stone rolled aside, he pulled her free. Her body limp in his arms, her clothes torn. A strange emblem burned on her chest armor, something royal, something sacred. Rylan didn't understand it. He only saw pain. He tore part of his sleeve and tied it around her bleeding arm, then checked her pulse. It was weak, but still there. He looked up. Smoke drifted across the ruins. Shadows moved far away, maybe patrols. Maybe hunters. No time to think. He lifted her on his back. Her light body barely a burden compared to his guilt. He started walking toward the cliffs where his small ship was hidden, each step harder as explosions echoed behind. Someone was still fighting out there, but he didn't look back. The girl whispered something in her alien tongue, her voice like wind through crystal. He couldn't understand, but it sounded like a name, maybe calling for help. He answered quietly, "You're safe now?" "I promise." Though he wasn't sure if it was true, the ruins stretched for miles. Towers broken like teeth, skies full of burning clouds. His legs burned from climbing the steep rocks. He slipped once, cutting his arm, but held her tight. The girl's faint glow lit his path in the dark. As if guiding him somewhere, he wondered who she was. Why her armor looked different. Why her insignia shimmered like a crown. But he told himself not to care. Not to get attached. He just needed to save her. Patch her up and disappear. When he finally reached his hidden cargo ship, half buried in sand, he stumbled inside, laid her gently on the bench, and checked her pulse again. It was fading. He grabbed his med kit, injecting a stim to stabilize her. She flinched, gasping. Her hand reached for his wrist. Her skin cold, but glowing softly under his touch. "Don't talk," he said. "Just breathe." He covered her with his jacket. The temperature dropping fast outside, the storm winds rising. He sealed the hatch and powered up the small heater. Lights flickered inside the ship, shadows moving over the walls. He looked at her again, really looked. Her hair shimmered like strands of moonlight. Her face too perfect for a soldier, too fragile for war. Something about her made him uneasy. She wasn't just any alien girl. He felt it in his bones. But exhaustion hit him before fear did. He leaned against the metal wall, still watching her chest rise and fall slowly. Outside, thunder rolled through the valley. Lightning flashed over the dead city, and Rylan whispered to himself, "What did I just get myself into?" The alien girl stirred in her sleep, her fingers tightening around his jacket. And for the first time in years, he felt a reason to care again. He didn't know that the wounded girl he carried from the ruins was more than a survivor, more than a stranger. She was the lost queen of the Alarian Dominion, the rightful ruler of the stars, the one every soldier was still hunting. And by saving her, Rylan had unknowingly changed the fate of two worlds forever. The storm outside howled through the canyons, lightning tearing across the alien sky. Raylan sat beside the girl, watching the slow rhythm of her breathing. Every few minutes her body trembled. Like a system restarting, he could tell she wasn't human. Her veins pulsed with faint gold light under her skin. Too symmetrical, too flawless, yet too fragile at that moment. He poured water on a rag and wiped dust from her face, wondering what kind of war could turn someone like her into another broken survivor. Hours passed, and the sound of thunder faded to silence. He stepped outside for a moment, checking the horizon through his scope. No patrol lights, no drones, only smoke from the city below. He returned to the cabin and found her eyes open. Glowing softly in the dark, she tried to sit, but fell back with a gasp. Rylan knelt beside her and said gently, "Easy, you're safe." "I pulled you out of the ruins," she blinked. Confused, her voice weak but melodic. "You, human?" He nodded once, unsure if she said the word with fear or wonder. Her name came slowly through broken words. "Lyra, of Alaris." He repeated it under his breath. It sounded royal, almost sacred. She looked around the ship's narrow cabin, touching the walls like she didn't belong there. "Where are my guards?" she whispered. Rylan hesitated. "Didn't see anyone alive out there." Her lips trembled, but she turned away. Hiding the tears that began to fall, he said nothing. He knew that silence sometimes hurt less than truth. He cooked a simple meal from ration packs. The smell of synthetic soup filled the air. She refused at first, saying something about purity and royal diet, but hunger won. After eating, she fell asleep again, murmuring strange words. Maybe prayers, maybe memories. Raylan sat at the control seat, checking his ship's radar. No signals, but his gut told him they weren't alone. 2 days later, she could walk a little, her wounds healing faster than any humans would. Her body seemed to repair itself with faint golden light. Rylan asked once, "How did you end up there?" She looked at him long before answering. "My people turned on me," she said softly. "They thought I was dead." She didn't explain more. But that one sentence carried the weight of betrayal and kingdoms lost. He didn't press her. Sometimes truth took time. As they worked on repairing the engine together, she kept glancing at him, curious. "Why did you help me?" She finally asked. He shrugged. "Didn't think about it. I just couldn't leave you." She studied him like she couldn't understand that kind of answer. "Humans destroy," she said. "But you saved." Rylan smiled faintly. "Maybe we do both that night." He dreamed of the city again, the ruins glowing red. But this time he saw her standing there in a long golden robe, soldiers kneeling before her. Then the image shattered into fire. He woke up drenched in sweat. Lyra was awake too. Staring at him, she said quietly, "They will come for me, and if they find you with me, they will kill you." He met her gaze and said, Then they better not find us. Outside. The wind picked up. A low hum echoed from the distance. Rylan rushed to the radar 2 signals approaching fast. Damn, they're scanning, he whispered. Lyra's eyes widened. They're hunters. They wear my empire's mark, but they serve the traitors now. She stood. Still weak but determined. We must hide. He powered down the ship's systems, plunging them into near darkness. Through the viewport, 2 dark shapes passed overhead, bright lights sweeping the canyon floor. Rylan held his breath. Lyra pressed against the wall, her glowing veins dimming, like she was forcing her own light to fade. The ships hovered for a moment, then turned away, vanishing into the clouds. Silence returned. Both exhaled at the same time. After that night, Lyra began to trust him. Not with words, but with her presence. She sat near him when he worked, asked about Earth, about what humans were like before the war. Rylan told her about rain that fell on green trees, oceans that glowed under sunlight, cities that floated in the sky. She listened with quiet wonder and said, "We once had oceans like that too." Before war took everything, Rylan repaired the last part of his ship's communicator, and when he tested it, a burst of coded chatter filled the air. He froze. The signal came from orbit. Human language mixed with alien encryption. Someone was searching the same grid. He turned it off quickly, afraid of being traced. Lyra noticed, "Your people?" She asked. He shook his head. "No, bounty hunters." She looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "You could give me to them and walk free." He frowned. "You really think I'd do that?" She looked down, ashamed. "In my world, kindness always has a price." He smiled sadly. "In mine too," he said. "But sometimes we pay it anyway." That night, when she slept again, Rylan sat beside her, watching the faint light under her skin pulse with her heartbeat. He wondered what she really was, soldier, priestess, princess, but something deep inside told him she was far more than that. He didn't know he had just hidden the most powerful being in the sector, the one whose return would ignite rebellion across the stars. And though the galaxy slept in peace for now, its next storm had already begun to breathe in the dark. Days turned into a quiet rhythm aboard the old cargo ship. The hum of its life support, the only sound in the cold canyon air. Rylan scavenged by day and repaired what he could by night, while Lyra learned to walk without pain, her golden glow returning piece by piece. Sometimes he would find her standing at the open hatch, staring at the twin suns with a strange sadness in her eyes. She never said what she was thinking, but he could feel the weight of entire worlds behind her silence. One evening, Rylan came back from the wreck fields carrying power cells and ration packs. Lyra was sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, hands lifted slightly. He stopped at the doorway. A soft wind spun around her, even though the air inside the ship was still. Tools rattled, dust lifted, and the metal lights flickered. Her body shone brighter, gold veins like rivers of fire beneath her skin. Then it all stopped. The air dropped flat. She opened her eyes and looked directly at him. "You shouldn't have seen that," she whispered. He set the supplies down slowly. "You can move things with your mind?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said quietly, "You wouldn't understand." He stepped closer, his voice calm but curious. "Try me." Lyra turned away, wrapping herself in a blanket like a barrier. "My people are born with it. It is not magic." "It is heritage." Rylan frowned. "Heritage of what?" She looked at him then, eyes glowing faintly. "Royal blood." That word hung heavy in the air. Rylan sat down across from her, watching as she finally spoke the truth. "I am Lyra L. Fane, the rightful queen of the Alarian Dominion," she said, her tone steady but soft. "The generals betrayed me. They struck while my fleets were far away. They said I was weak, that I spoke too kindly of humans. They killed my council and burned my palace. I escaped only because my guard threw himself before the blast. I thought I would die there, until you came." Rylan rubbed his forehead, trying to make sense of it. "A queen," he muttered. "I dragged a queen out of rubble." She smiled bitterly. "And you saved what could destroy you." He blinked. "Destroy me?" She nodded. "If the Dominion learns you helped me, they'll see it as an act of war." Her voice shook slightly. "And if your people find me alive, they'll see it as an opportunity." For a long time, neither spoke. Only the soft hum of the ship filled the silence. Finally, Rylan said, "You're safe here." "I don't care what anyone thinks." She looked at him, surprised. "You would risk your life for a stranger?" He smiled faintly. "You're not a stranger anymore." That night, Rylan worked outside, repairing a sensor array, when he noticed something strange. A glint on the horizon, like metal catching light. He lifted his scope 3, small drones hovering far off, scanning the canyon. His heart sank. They were closing in. He ran inside. "We've got company," he said. Lyra stood up immediately, calm but alert. "They found me." They shut down every light. Rylan grabbed his rifle, his heart pounding through the viewport. He saw one drone sweep lower, scanning the rocks. Suddenly, the radar blipped a new signal. A small ship descending fast. Before he could react, something slammed in the ground outside, sand and dust blasting the hull. He raised his weapon and whispered, "Stay back." The door creaked open. A shadow stepped in, a tall alien in battle armor, its chest bearing the Dominion symbol, the same one Lyra had burned into her own armor. The intruder froze when he saw her, his rifle lowering slightly. "Your Majesty," he said, voice trembling. Lyra's breath caught. "Karn?" She whispered, recognition flashing in her eyes. The soldier nodded. "We thought you dead." Rylan lowered his weapon slightly. But something felt off. Karn turned toward him, eyes cold. "And you are the human who touched our queen?" His tone was full of contempt. Rylan clenched his jaw. "I saved her," Karn sneered. "Then you have already committed a crime against the Dominion." Before Rylan could move, Karn raised his weapon. But Lyra stepped forward, shouting, "Stop!" A golden wave of energy burst from her hand, throwing the soldier against the wall. Sparks flew, the ship trembled. Karn coughed, stunned. "You still have your power," he hissed. Then the prophecy was true. Rylan looked between them, confused. What prophecy? Karn laughed bitterly. That the fallen queen would rise again. Guided by a human hand, Rylan fired once. A clean shot that hit Karn before he could reach for his gun. Silence returned, smoke rising from the floor. Lyra looked at Rylan with wide eyes, a mix of shock and sorrow. "You killed him," she whispered. He nodded, breathing hard. "He was going to kill you." She sank to her knees beside the fallen soldier, closing his eyes gently. "He was loyal once," she said, voice trembling. "The last piece of my past." Rylan crouched beside her. Unsure what to say, she turned toward him, her eyes glowing brighter than before. "You don't understand, Rylan. Now they will know I live. The entire Dominion will come for me." He met her gaze, calm but firm. "Then let them come. We'll face them together." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said softly, "You speak like a soldier of my court." He smiled faintly. "I'm just a man trying to do the right thing outside." The wind roared again, and in the distance, the first lights of enemy ships appeared in the sky. The hunt had begun, and the galaxy had just learned that its lost queen was alive. Guarded by a single human who refused to run, the next dawn came with fire in the sky, the horizon burning red as Dominion patrol ships circled above the canyons. Rylan and Lyra packed fast, throwing what little supplies they had into the cargo bay. The hum of engines echoed off the cliffs. She stood beside him at the cockpit, her golden eyes sharp and calm, though her hands trembled. "They've found me," she said, her voice quiet. "We can't stay here anymore." Ryland nodded, switching power to the thrusters. "Then we fly." The ship rose through a storm of dust and debris, weaving between canyon walls as plasma shots streaked past. The controls shook in Ryland's hands. Alarms screaming. "They're locking on." He shouted. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing. And suddenly the ship's lights dimmed. A surge of energy rippled through the hull. The first missile exploded mid-air, pushed off course by an invisible force. Ryland looked at her in shock. "You did that?" She opened her eyes, breathing hard. A queen must defend her crown. They burst out of the canyon into the open desert of Orinfor. Sand stretching for miles under twin suns. 3 Dominion fighters chasing them close. Ryland pushed the engines beyond limit, but his ship was old, panels shaking. "Fuel gauges dropping fast. We can't outrun them," he said. Lyra leaned over the console, scanning the map. "Head for the storm belt," he frowned. "That thing kills ships." She met his eyes. "Then it will hide us," minutes later. Lightning filled the sky as they dove into the raging storm, winds tearing across the hull, flashes of blue plasma lighting the cockpit. Outside, the chasing ships vanished one by one into the clouds. One crashed in a burst of light, another spun away. Ryland grinned despite himself. "Nice call." "Your Majesty," she smiled faintly. "Stop calling me that," he laughed. "All right." Lyra, her name lingered between them like warmth in the cold storm, but their victory was short. The ship rattled violently, alarms flashing red. "We're losing altitude," Ryland said, trying to stabilize. A spark burst from the control panel. Smoke filling the air, Lyra reached forward. Placing her glowing hand on the system core, the lights flickered back to life. Power surging. "You can heal machines too?" he asked, amazed. She shrugged weakly. "No. I just convinced it to hold on a little longer." They finally broke through the other side of the storm. The skies calm and golden. Below them stretched a sea of dunes, leading to an abandoned trade station. Ryland landed hard, the ship sliding across sand before settling with a groan. Silence followed, broken only by their heavy breathing. He looked at her and said, "We made it." She nodded. But her glow dimmed, her strength fading. "Every time I use my power," she whispered, "I burn what's left of me." They set up camp near the wrecked landing site. The twin suns sinking below the horizon, Lyra sat beside the fire he built, her face soft in the light. "Raylan," she said quietly, "do you ever regret helping me?" He looked at her, surprised. "Why would I?" She lowered her gaze. "Because you had a life before me. Now you're hunted too." He chuckled softly. "I didn't have much of a life before. Just a ship, a bad map, and silence." She smiled sadly. "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I've got a reason to fly, for a while." They sat in silence, the stars bright above them. The desert wind cool and gentle. Lyra spoke again, her voice trembling. "When I was crowned, they told me a queen must never love, because love makes you weak." She paused. "But I think love makes us strong enough to fight again." Raylan didn't answer. He just reached for her hand. Their fingers brushed, and in that brief touch, they both felt something more powerful than fear. Suddenly, the ground shook, distant engines roaring. Ryland jumped up, scanning the horizon. Lights flashed in the sky, Dominion dropships descending. "They tracked us," he said. Grabbing his blaster, Lyra stood, her hair glowing in the dark. "Then this ends tonight," she said. "No more running." He turned to her, desperate. "If we fight them, you'll die." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, But if I keep running, my people die. The first dropship landed nearby. Sand whipping into the air, armored soldiers pouring out. Rylan took cover behind wreckage. Firing bursts of plasma, one soldier fell, another charged forward. Lyra stepped into the open, hands raised, golden light bursting from her palms. A wave of energy slammed through the soldiers, scattering them like leaves, but she screamed in pain. Collapsing to her knees, Rylan ran to her, catching her before she hit the ground. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't do this to yourself." She smiled weakly. "A queen does what she must." He looked at her glowing eyes, filled with both pain and pride. "Then let me fight beside you," he said. Standing to face the oncoming troops, side by side they fought, the human and the queen. Fire and light cutting through darkness, each protecting the other. When the last ship exploded in the distance, they both stood silent, breathless, burned but alive. The desert quiet once more. Rylan turned to her, saying softly, "You could have left me. You didn't," she replied. "You could have abandoned me in the ruins. You didn't." They stared at each other as the twin suns rose again, light spilling across the sands, and in that rising dawn, both knew the truth. What began as survival had become something deeper, something dangerous, something worth dying for. The galaxy would soon learn that a human and a fallen queen were no longer running. They were rising together. The desert was silent after the last battle. The sand still glowing faintly from the plasma burns, Rylan stood beside the wreck of his ship, watching smoke rise into the dawn, his armor cracked, his body bruised. But he was alive. Across from him, Lyra knelt in the sand, her golden light flickering like a dying flame. He ran to her side, kneeling down. "Hey, stay with me," he said. His voice trembling, she looked up, eyes full of tears and light. "It's over," she whispered. "For you, maybe," he said, "but not for me. I'm not leaving you." Her breath came shallow, every word a struggle. "You don't understand. Rylan, the power inside me. It's waking. If I lose control, everything here will burn." He grabbed her shoulders. "Then I'll burn with you," she tried to smile. "You humans, always so stubborn." Lightning cracked above them. The skies darkened, wind rising as if the world itself responded to her pain. Her body lifted slightly from the ground, sand swirling around her in golden circles. Rylan stepped back, shielding his eyes. He shouted over the roar, "Lyra, fight it!" But she screamed, her voice carrying through the storm, light bursting from her body in waves. The wreckage of ships lifted into the air, metal melting under pure energy. Rylan ran toward her, fighting the wind, his boots sinking into shifting sand. When he reached her, he wrapped his arms around her glowing form, the light burning his skin. "You're not alone," he shouted. "I'm here." Something in his words broke through the storm. Her shaking slowed, her scream turned into a gasp. Her light dimmed until it pulsed softly like a heartbeat. And then silence. The wind stopped, the sky cleared, and Lyra collapsed into his arms. The two of them fell to their knees. Surrounded by golden dust, he held her close, whispering, "It's done." She opened her eyes slowly, weak but alive. "You saved me again," she whispered. He smiled. "Guess that's becoming a habit." Moments later, the sky above them lit up not with fire, but with dozens of silver ships descending, their insignias glowing the old royal seal of the Alarian Dominion. Rylan stood, pulling Lyra up with him. "More enemies?" he asked, but she shook her head, smiling faintly. "No. My people," she raised her hand, her palm still glowing. Sending a single beam of golden light upward, the ships stopped in formation. Then one descended slowly, landing on the sand. From it stepped a group of armored warriors, Their leader bowed deeply, his voice trembling with awe. "Your Majesty." "The stars themselves told us you still lived." Lyra straightened. "Weak but regal." "Then hear me now," she said, her voice stronger than before. "The Dominion, as you knew it, is gone. The traitors will fall. But we will not rise for vengeance. We will rise for peace." Her words echoed across the dunes. Carried by the wind, the soldiers looked at her, then at the human standing beside her. One of them whispered, "A human?" Lyra nodded proudly. "He saved me when no one else would. He is to be honored." They bowed their heads slightly. Uncertain but obedient, Rylan leaned toward her and muttered, "You don't have to do that." She smiled softly. "I want to." As the soldiers began repairing their ship, Lyra turned to him, her golden eyes shimmering. "When I was dying in those ruins, I thought everything I was meant nothing. But you showed me I was wrong." Rylan looked down. "I didn't do much." She shook her head. "You did what no soldier, no council, no god ever did you cared." He chuckled. "Guess humans are good at that." A warm breeze swept over them. Carrying the scent of metal and dust, the twin suns rose higher, reflecting off the silver ships like mirrors of dawn. Lyra reached up, touching his cheek gently. "Come with me," she said. "Help me rebuild what was lost." He blinked, caught off guard. "You want me to live among your people?" She smiled. "No, I want you to live beside me." His heart pounded. He laughed quietly. "I'm not exactly royal material." She tilted her head. "Neither am I anymore." They stood there, surrounded by soldiers and ships. Two survivors bound by chance and choice, as the fleet prepared to ascend. Rylan looked once more at the empty desert. "The place where everything had changed," he said softly. "This is where I stopped running," she replied. "And where I started living again." He turned toward her. "Then let's not stop now." The ramp opened, golden light spilling across the sand. Lyra took his hand, leading him up into her ship. The engines roared to life, lifting them toward the stars. Rylan looked through the viewport, watching the desert fade into the horizon below them. The scars of war glowed faintly like veins of fire, but above them stretched infinite black, full of promise. Lyra stood beside him, the faint crown of light forming once again above her head, not from power, but from acceptance. She looked at him and said, "You didn't just save a queen." "Rylan, you saved a people." He smiled. "Maybe. But I think you saved me first." She laughed softly, resting her head against his shoulder. Outside, the fleet turned toward the distant stars, and as the sun rose behind them, the legend of the human who saved the dying alien queen was born. A story that would echo through the galaxies forever. A story not of conquest, but of compassion, not of war, but of love. The day the queen rose again, and humanity proved that even in a universe full of fear and fire, a single act of kindness could change the stars.